Hello, my name is Dr. Richard Nequenti. This is a research article podcast from the journal International Journal of Molecular Sciences that examines environmental factors influencing thyroid-stimulating hormone and thyroid hormone levels in healthy adults. The authors review the existing literature on the impact of lifestyle factors, e.g. smoking, alcohol consumption, diet, exercise, and pollutants, e.g. chemicals, heavy metals, on thyroid function. They highlight the inconsistencies observed in the research, emphasizing the need for more robust studies to understand the complex relationship between environmental factors and thyroid health. What this podcast will teach you: what are the main environmental factors that have been shown to significantly influence TSH and thyroid hormone levels in healthy adults? How does the evidence regarding the impact of various environmental factors on thyroid function vary in terms of consistency and the size of the studies? What are the implications for public health of the findings about the environmental factors that affect thyroid function? And what areas should future research focus on? Subscribe to learn more.
All right, get ready, because today we're doing a deep dive into something pretty wild: how stuff in our environment can actually mess with our thyroids.
Yeah, it's kind of alarming when you start to think about it. We're talking about everyday stuff you might not even consider, like what you eat and even the products you use. We dug into some dense research to break it all down for you.
Okay, so before we get into all that, can we do a really quick refresher on how the thyroid even works, just so everyone's on the same page?
Absolutely. So we've got the HPT axis, hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and the thyroid all working together. They're kind of like a chain reaction.
Okay, so like a well-oiled machine.
Right. So when your thyroid hormone levels get low, your brain, the hypothalamus actually, sends out TSH, that's thyroid-stimulating hormone, to tell your thyroid to make more.
So TSH is like the messenger making sure everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets a little worrying. All kinds of things in our environment can mess with this whole process. That can mean your thyroid can't produce those hormones like it should.
And that's a big deal, right? Because we're not just talking about feeling a little tired. Thyroid hormones affect a ton of stuff in your body.
Oh, absolutely. They impact your metabolism, your mood, how well your heart's working, even your brain power. They're involved in so much.
Exactly, which is why it's so important to know what can mess with them.
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. All those surprising ways your surroundings, the things you do every day, could be impacting your thyroid.
And most importantly, we'll give you some info so you can take control of your thyroid health. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, let's kick things off with something I think we're all familiar with: smoking. Okay, so smoking. We all know it's not good for you, but this research paper we're looking at today, it really gets into how it messes with your thyroid.
Right. And it's not just your lungs taking a hit. Smoking can really throw things off balance.
So we're not talking about secondhand smoke here. This is directly impacting the smoker.
This is all about what you're directly putting into your body. And one of the worst offenders is something called thiocyanate. It's a component of cigarette smoke, and it basically interferes with how your body uses iodine.
And we know iodine, that's like essential for the thyroid to work properly, right?
Exactly. Think of iodine as the key ingredient your thyroid needs to create those hormones. Thiocyanate is like that annoying coworker who keeps swiping your stapler, but in this case, it's stealing away the vital ingredient your thyroid needs.
Okay, so how bad is this thiocyanate really? Like, is one cigarette enough to mess things up?
Well, it's obviously best to avoid smoking altogether, but the research actually found a pretty clear link between how much someone smokes and its impact on their TSH levels.
TSH, that's the thyroid-stimulating hormone, right? The messenger that tells your thyroid to make more hormones.
That's the one. They found that for every 10 nanograms per milliliter increase in something called serum cotinine, which is basically a measure of how much someone smokes, TSH levels dropped by 1.4%.
So that means the more you smoke, the less TSH your body produces.
Exactly. And since TSH is the signal that tells your thyroid to produce those crucial hormones, having lower TSH means your thyroid might not be getting the message to work as hard as it needs to.
Wow, that's kind of scary. So even if someone is showing signs of low thyroid hormones, their body might not even be sending the right signals to correct it.
That's the worry. But the encouraging thing is studies show that when people quit smoking, their TSH levels usually start to recover.
Okay, so there's hope for people who quit. Their bodies can start to bounce back.
Absolutely. Our bodies are amazingly resilient, but it definitely highlights the importance of quitting sooner rather than later.
For sure. All right, so we've tackled smoking. What about another lifestyle factor that's always up for debate, alcohol? Does that glass of wine at dinner help or hurt our thyroids?
It's funny you asked that. The research on alcohol and the thyroid is all over the map. Some studies show no effect at all, while others suggest a little bit of alcohol might even be protective.
Wait, really? A protective effect? How so?
Well, and remember, this is just based on some studies. More research is definitely needed. But there are theories that moderate alcohol intake might have some anti-inflammatory benefits, which could theoretically benefit the thyroid. But this particular study we're looking at today, they found something interesting.
What's that?
They found that higher alcohol consumption was linked to higher TSH levels. But here's the catch. They also found lower levels of free T3, the active form of thyroid hormone.
It's like a mixed message then. Higher TSH, but lower actual active thyroid hormone.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher. It could be that alcohol directly affects the thyroid gland, or maybe it messes with how our brains interpret those hormone signals.
So more research is needed. What else is new?
Right, the thyroid and its relationship with everything is complex. But that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right? Always something new to uncover. Speaking of, let's shift gears a bit and talk about BMI, body mass index. This one's directly tied to our metabolism, which we know is closely linked to the thyroid.
Yeah, BMI has always been a hot topic when it comes to overall health. So what's the connection with our thyroids?
Well, studies have found a connection between a higher BMI and higher TSH levels, which is intriguing.
So if you're carrying extra weight, it could mean your thyroid function is affected.
It's possible. And while we're still unpacking all the reasons why this might be, it probably comes down to the complex relationship between fat cells, hormones, and you guessed it, the thyroid.
It's like this intricate web of hormones all impacting each other.
It really is. And this just emphasizes how interconnected everything is. Our weight, what we eat, even our habits, it all plays a role in how well our thyroids function. And speaking of what we eat, that's a whole other aspect of the environment that can impact our thyroids. Let's dig into that next.
Okay, so let's talk about food and the thyroid. I feel like everyone's always saying there's some new thyroid diet to try, but what does the research actually say?
Well, it's not quite as simple as labeling foods as good or bad, It's about understanding the nuances and how different foods can impact that delicate balance we keep talking about.
Right, it's all about balance.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. What about soy? It seems like soy is always at the center of these food and health debates. What's the deal with soy and the thyroid?
Yeah, soy can be a tricky one. It contains these compounds called isoflavones, and you might remember from earlier we talked about iodine being super important for thyroid function.
Yeah, iodine being that key ingredient for making those thyroid hormones.
Exactly. And these isoflavones, well, they can actually mess with the enzyme that uses iodine to make those hormones.
Okay, so that doesn't sound good. Is soy like stealing away those building blocks?
Well, it's not quite that simple. Some studies show soy having a pretty minimal effect on the thyroid, while others suggest it might lead to a small increase in TSH levels, meaning your thyroid has to work a little harder.
Okay, so potential for a little extra strain on the thyroid. And I think I remember reading somewhere that some studies even show soy decreasing thyroid hormones.
You're right, there are studies that show that too. It's honestly a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to soy and the thyroid. More research is definitely needed to give more definitive answers.
It's always back to more research. But I guess that's how science works. So for our listeners who love their soy products, what's the takeaway here? Should we be ditching the tofu?
I wouldn't say ditch anything completely without talking to your doctor first. It's all about finding what works best for you. If you have any existing thyroid concerns, definitely chat with your doctor. They can help you figure out if soy is something you need to be mindful of or not.
Makes sense. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about foods that are naturally high in iodine. Seaweed, for example, is known for being packed with iodine.
Right. Seaweed is a great source of iodine, which we know is crucial. But here's the catch. Too much iodine can actually be a bad thing.
Oh, really? Too much of a good thing can backfire.
Yeah.
That's something I think a lot of people don't realize when it comes to nutrition. They think, oh, it's good for me, so more must be better.
That's exactly it. And with seaweed specifically, some studies have shown that eating a lot of it can actually cause a temporary spike in TSH levels.
So it's like your body's getting this sudden surge of iodine, and it doesn't know what to do with it all at once.
That's a good way to put it. It sort of throws things out of whack for a bit. So again, it goes back to that idea of balance. You don't want to go overboard with anything.
Balance is key. Now, I know we're focusing a lot on soy and seaweed, but this research paper we're looking at also mentions some other interesting food connections, although the research in these areas is still pretty limited. I think it'd be interesting to touch on them briefly.
Yeah, definitely. They found some early hints that full-fat cheese might be linked to slightly lower free T4 levels, while on the other hand, white bread might actually be associated with an increase.
Wow, that's so interesting. Cheese and bread, not exactly the first foods that come to mind when you think about thyroid health. What about seafood?
Right, and seafood being a good source of iodine, some studies suggest it could potentially boost both free T4 and T3 levels. Again, more research is needed, but it just goes to show how much food can impact our thyroids, even in ways we might not expect.
Really makes you realize how interconnected everything is.
Mm.
So we've covered a lot of ground here today: smoking, alcohol, BMI, the foods we eat. It seems like our environment plays a pretty significant role in how well our thyroids function.
It really does. And the more research we do, the more we realize just how complex that relationship truly is. There's still so much more to learn.
For sure. So for our listeners who are now probably wondering what they can do to protect their thyroid health, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from all of this?
I'd say it's about awareness. Just being mindful that the air you breathe, the food you eat, the things you're exposed to every day, they can all impact your thyroid. It's not about living in fear, but about being empowered to make informed choices.
Absolutely. And if anyone's concerned about their thyroid health, the first step is always to talk to your doctor. They can run tests to check your hormone levels and help you figure out a personalized plan.
Exactly. It's all about working with your doctor to figure out what's best for your body and your overall health.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So that wraps up another deep dive. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And as always, keep those brains curious.